The thick cream envelope with gold embossing arrived the same way it always did, perfectly timed to feel like a slap in the face. Gabriella turned it over in her hands, her fingers tracing the raised lettering announcing her parents' grand 50th wedding anniversary celebration. Of course, they'd picked today to send it. Her 48th birthday. The house was silent except for the soft hum of her cat purring by the window. No calls, no messages, no cake. Even Paisley, her loving yet absent-minded college-aged daughter, hadn't remembered. Gabriella wasn't angry, not really. Just tired. She'd spent nearly 3 decades watching her family celebrate everything, anniversaries, promotions, her brother Trey's kids' birthdays, everything but her. Lost in thought, she didn't hear the front door open until Paisley's voice called out. "Oh my God, Mom." Paisley's bag hit the floor as she rushed in, her dark hair flying behind her. "I can't believe I forgot. It's your birthday. Finals had me so stressed I completely—" "It's okay," Gabriella interrupted, giving a small, practiced smile. "You're here now." "No, it's not okay." Paisley's wide eyes fell on the invitation Gabriella still held. "Are they serious? They sent this on your birthday? Again?" She snatched the envelope, her voice turning sharp as she read it. "They want you to give a speech again? After all this?" Gabriella shrugged, trying to laugh it off, but her voice cracked. "It's been 28 years. But who's counting?" "Well, I am now," Paisley said firmly, taking her mother's hands. "Mom, you don't have to keep doing this. Let them wait. Let's celebrate you for once." Gabriella hesitated, a lifetime of putting others first weighing on her. But something in Paisley's fierce expression sparked a shift, a tiny ember of something new. Maybe she didn't. Maybe it really was time. Gabriella stared at the invitation resting on the kitchen counter, the weight of it pressing heavier than it should. The gold script gleamed in the morning light, mocking her. The request for her to give the anniversary speech was clear and unapologetic, just like every year for the past 15. Her phone buzzed on the table, the name Mom flashing across the screen. She let it ring. Seconds later, a voicemail notification popped up. Then another call, this time from her brother, Trey. Paisley walked into the kitchen, mug in hand, and saw Gabriella's expression. "Let me guess, urgent anniversary planning business, right?" Gabriella sighed, nodding. "It's like clockwork. I'm invisible 364 days a year, but when they need a glowing speech to impress their friends, suddenly I'm indispensable." The phone buzzed again, this time with a text. Gabriella picked it up and read aloud. "Meeting starts at 7. Don't be difficult."
She scoffed.
"Because apparently prioritizing myself is being difficult. You know what's really difficult?" Paisley said, setting her mug down with a thud. "Spending your entire life being treated like you don't matter." "Mom, why do you let them do this to you?" Gabriella hesitated. "They're my family, Paisley. That's just how it's always been." "That doesn't make it right," Paisley shot back. "You're allowed to say no. You're allowed to choose yourself." Gabriella looked at her daughter, seeing not just the fierce protectiveness in her eyes, but also something deeper. Understanding. Paisley had witnessed years of quiet heartbreak, of birthdays forgotten, achievements dismissed, and Gabriella pushing her own needs aside for the sake of keeping the peace. The phone rang again, breaking the silence. Gabriella didn't even glance at the screen this time. She picked up the invitation instead, running her fingers over the elegant lettering. "Do you remember last year?" she asked, her voice quiet. "When Vanessa suggested they sing Happy Birthday to me during the anniversary toast." Paisley snorted. "And Grandma shut it down because it would detract from the celebration." Gabriella nodded. "They've been doing this for so long, Paisley. I don't even think they realize it anymore." "But you realize it," Paisley said firmly. "And you don't have to keep playing their game." She stepped closer, her voice softening. "Mom, let's do something different this year.
Forget their party.
Let's celebrate you instead." Gabriella stared at her daughter, torn between decades of ingrained obligation and the spark of rebellion Paisley had ignited. "If I don't give the speech, they'll lose it." "Let them," Paisley said, crossing her arms. "Maybe they need to." For a moment, Gabriella didn't speak. Then, like a key turning in a long-locked door, she felt something shift inside her. "You're right," she said slowly, the words foreign but freeing. "Maybe it's time." Paisley grinned, grabbing her mother's hands. "So, what's the plans?" Gabriella glanced at her laptop, where her unfinished memoir sat waiting. "First, we have dinner. Then I think I finally know how my story ends." The knock on Gabriella's door came just as she was settling into her desk chair, ready to finish the last chapter of her memoir. She sighed, already knowing who it would be. Sure enough, when she opened the door, Vanessa stood there, looking uncharacteristically awkward. "Your mother sent me," Vanessa said, stepping inside before Gabriella could respond.
She's worried.
Gabriella arched an eyebrow. "About what?" Vanessa hesitated, her designer bag slipping slightly from her shoulder. "You're not answering her calls. She's convinced you're going to make things difficult." "Difficult?" Gabriella repeated, crossing her arms. "By not showing up to their big party and giving another glowing speech about their perfect marriage?" Vanessa winced. "You've always done such a wonderful job with those speeches. Your mother counts on you to make her look good," Gabriella interrupted. "Vanessa, I've been doing this for 15 years. Every single time, I stand up there and tell the world how amazing they are, and every single time, they forget I exist the moment the applause dies down." Vanessa set her bag down on the couch, visibly uncomfortable. "Look, I get it. I do. But skipping this? Not giving the speech? It's going to embarrass them, Gabriella. You know how they are about appearances." Gabriella walked over to her desk, where her laptop sat open. She tilted the screen toward Vanessa. "Let me show you something." Vanessa stepped closer, her eyes scanning the screen. Her face paled as she read the title. "The Art of Invisibility, A Daughter's Guide to Being Forgotten." "You wrote a book about them?" Vanessa whispered, her voice equal parts shock and disbelief. Gabriella nodded. "About all of you, actually. About what it feels like to be the one who's always left in the background. The forgotten birthdays, the dismissed achievements, the years of being good enough to write their speeches but not good enough to matter." Vanessa took a step back. "You can't publish this. It'll destroy them." Gabriella's lips curled into a sad smile.
"No, Vanessa."
"It'll force them to finally see me, whether they like it or not." Vanessa opened her mouth to respond, but before she could, the front door swung open and Marlo walked in, her heels clicking against the floor. Well, Marlo said, her tone sharp as she surveyed the room. "The prodigal sister strikes again. What's this I hear about you refusing to give the speech?" Gabriella sighed, crossing her arms. "Nice to see you too, Marlo." "Cut the sarcasm," Marlo snapped, her perfect composure starting to crack. "Do you have any idea how much chaos you've caused? Mother's beside herself. Father's avoiding the whole situation. And Trey? He's blaming me, of course. Sounds like a family problem," Gabriella said coolly. "Not mine." Marlo stepped closer, her voice dropping to a hiss. "You're being selfish."
Dramatic.
"As always." Gabriella didn't flinch. "Selfish? For once, I'm putting myself first."
Dramatic?
Maybe. But after 48 years of being ignored, I think I've earned a little drama. "This isn't just about you." Marlo shot back, her voice rising. "Do you know what people will say? About the family? About all of us?" "They'll say the truth," Gabriella replied. "That you all treated me like I was invisible. And you know what, Marlo? If that embarrasses you, maybe it should." Marlo's face turned red, her composure slipping further. "You're going to ruin everything." "For what?" "Attention." Gabriella took a deep breath, her voice steady. "Not attention. Validation. Respect. And maybe, just maybe, a little justice." Vanessa shifted uncomfortably, glancing between the two sisters. "This doesn't have to go this far," she said quietly. Gabriella turned to her. "It already has. And for once, I'm not backing down." Marlo glared at her, fists clenched. "You think this makes you brave? Turning your back on your families?" "No," Gabriella said firmly. "Standing up to them does." Marlo's jaw tightened, but she didn't respond. She turned on her heel and stormed out of the house, slamming the door behind her. Vanessa lingered for a moment, her expression conflicted. "Gabriella?" "Go ahead," Gabriella said softly. "Tell Mother I'm being difficult." "I'm sure she'll understand." Vanessa didn't reply. She simply grabbed her bag and left, leaving Gabriella alone in the quiet house. But for the first time in years, the silence didn't feel heavy. It felt freeing. The dining room was exactly as Gabriella expected, grand, pristine, and utterly suffocating. The long table was set with polished silverware, crystal glasses, and floral centerpieces that screamed perfection. It was Mother's domain, a stage carefully crafted to show the world just how flawless their family was. Gabriella slid into her usual seat at the far end of the table, away from the spotlight, and watched as her siblings and their spouses chatted as if everything were normal. Trey was engrossed in a conversation with Vanessa about the guest list, while Marlo sipped her wine, her air of superiority as unshakable as ever. "More wine, Gabriella?" Mother's voice cut through the low hum of conversation. She held the bottle out, her smile tight and practiced. "No, thank you," Gabriella said evenly. "You look tired, dear," Mother observed, her tone laced with feigned concern. "Writing does take such a toll, doesn't it?" Gabriella didn't respond. She picked at her salad, letting the room's chatter wash over her until Trey cleared his throat. "So," he began, his eyes darting nervously. "Speaking of writing, how's the new book coming along?" The table fell silent. Every pair of eyes turned to Gabriella. "It's finished," she said simply, setting her fork down. "Oh, how wonderful." Mother's smile brightened. "Will we be getting advance copies for the anniversary? We could display them on the—" "I don't think that's appropriate, Mother," Marlo interrupted, her warning glance sharp. "Why not?" Father chimed in, looking genuinely confused. "Gabriella's books are always something to be proud of." "Are they?" Gabriella asked, her voice steady but cold. "When was the last time any of you actually read one?" The silence that followed was deafening. Gabriella leaned back in her chair, letting the weight of her words settle over the room. "Vanessa loved your last book," Mother said quickly, attempting to recover. "The one about the immigrant family in Detroit. What a lovely story. Did you enjoy the part about the mother who actually remembered her daughter's birthday?" Gabriella asked, her voice sharp. "Is this really necessary?" Marlo interjected, setting her glass down with a clink. "We're here to discuss the anniversary, not rehash ancient history." Paisley, who had been quietly observing, finally spoke. "Ancient history? You mean the decades you've all spent treating my mom like she's invisible?" Her voice was calm, but the steel beneath it was unmistakable. "Paisley," Trey began, his tone patronizing, "this is family business." "You don't." "No," Paisley cut him off, her eyes blazing. "This is my business. I've watched my mom bend over backward for this family my entire life, and what does she get in return? Nothing. Not even a happy birthday. But sure, let's talk about the anniversary because clearly that's more important." "Paisley, that's enough," Mother snapped, her composure slipping. "No, it's not," Paisley shot back. "You all take her for granted. You expect her to show up, give speeches, write checks, play her part, but when was the last time any of you showed up for her?" "Everything we do is for family," Mother said firmly, her voice rising. Gabriella laughed bitterly. "Family. That's a good one. Last week was my birthday. Again. Where were you?" Mother waved a dismissive hand. "You know how busy things get during anniversary planning." "I was in London," Marlo added, as if that excused her. "I had a work meeting," Trey mumbled, avoiding Gabriella's gaze. "And Father's?" Gabriella pressed. Father looked genuinely confused. "Was it really last week?" Paisley slammed her hand on the table, making everyone jump. "Do you even hear yourselves? You all sit here acting like it's normal to forget someone's birthday for 48 years. What kind of family does that?" "Paisley, please," Vanessa tried to intervene, but Gabriella stopped her. "No, she's right," Gabriella said, her voice firm. "And that's why I'm not giving a speech this year." "You most certainly are," Mother said sharply. "It's tradition. Like forgetting my birthday is tradition?" Gabriella shot back. She stood, her hands gripping the edge of the table. You want to talk about tradition?
Fine.
Check your email. I sent you all advance copies of my memoir an hour ago. The sound of phones being pulled from pockets filled the room. Gabriella watched their faces as they read the title, The Art of Invisibility, A Daughter's Guide to Being Forgotten. Mother's hand shook as she read the synopsis aloud. A searing exploration of emotional neglect and the subtle cruelty of being overlooked by the people who are supposed to love you most. She looked up, her face pale. Gabriella, what have you done? I told the truth, Gabriella said. You've spent years ignoring me. Now the world will know what that feels like. This will ruin us, Marlowe hissed, her face red with anger. Maybe, Gabriella said, turning to leave. But for once, it's not about you. It's about me. As she walked out of the dining room, Paisley followed close behind, her head held high. For the first time in her life, Gabriella felt free. The morning Gabriella's memoir hit shelves, her phone was flooded with notifications. Texts, emails, news alerts, all lighting up her screen in rapid succession. Reviews were pouring in from major publications, praising her work as raw and unflinching, a powerful reckoning of family dynamics, and an unmissable exploration of the silent wounds carried by overlooked daughters. Paisley leaned over Gabriella's shoulder, scrolling through Twitter on her own phone. Mom, look at this. Your name is trending. People are sharing quotes from the book everywhere. Gabriella set her mug of coffee down and glanced at the screen. Comments like, The Art of Invisibility made me feel seen, and this book is exactly what I needed to read, filled her feed. It was surreal. Her story was no longer just hers. It had become a voice for so many others. But not everyone was thrilled. Her phone buzzed again, this time with a call from Trey. She let it go to voicemail, just as she had with Marlowe's 3 earlier attempts. Another text popped up seconds later from her mother. We need to talk.
Call me immediately.
Paisley smirked as she read the text over Gabriella's shoulder. Looks like Grandma's not handling this well. Gabriella sighed. She's probably more concerned about what her friends at the country club think than about what I actually wrote. But Gabriella underestimated her mother. Later that afternoon, the doorbell rang, and when Gabriella opened it, there stood her mother, dressed impeccably as always, but her usual air of authority was noticeably absent. Can I come in? Her mother asked, clutching a leather-bound planner tightly in her hands. Gabriella hesitated, but stepped aside. Her mother walked into the living room, her gaze darting around nervously before settling on Gabriella. This book of yours, her mother began, her voice strained. It's all anyone is talking about. The phone hasn't stopped ringing. Gabriella folded her arms, her expression neutral. Sounds exhausting. Her mother ignored the jab. Do you have any idea what this is doing to us? The club, the guests for the anniversary, they're all asking questions. Whispering. Gabriella's jaw tightened. And what about you, Mother? Have you asked yourself why I wrote it? Or are you too busy worrying about your reputation? Her mother faltered, her perfectly composed mask slipping. I read it, she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. Gabriella blinked, caught off guard. You did. Her mother nodded, setting the planner on the coffee table and clasping her hands together. All night. I couldn't stop. And she trailed off, her voice breaking slightly. It was like looking into a mirror I didn't recognize. I thought I knew everything about our family, but you were invisible to me. Weren't you? Gabriella swallowed hard, years of pain and anger bubbling just beneath the surface. You made me invisible, she said, her voice cracking. You all did. Her mother's eyes filled with tears. I thought I was doing everything right. I gave you the best schools, the best opportunities, but I never thought to give you me. Gabriella stared at her, a lifetime of longing crashing into this single moment. I didn't need perfect parties or fancy gifts. I just needed you to see me. Her mother reached for her hand, trembling. I see you now, Gabriella. I don't know how to fix the past, but if there's any way to make it right, tell me. Gabriella hesitated, the raw sincerity in her mother's voice cutting through years of resentment. It starts with honesty. Real honesty. No more pretending everything's perfect. No more sweeping things under the rug. Her mother nodded slowly, her composure breaking as a tear slid down her cheek. "Okay," she whispered. "Okay." The front door opened, and Paisley walked in, pausing at the sight of her grandmother holding Gabriella's hand. She raised an eyebrow. "Am I interrupting something?" Gabriella glanced at her daughter, then back at her mother. "No, Paisley. You're just in time. We're finally having the conversation this family should have had decades ago." The grand hall shimmered with chandeliers, and the hum of polite conversation filled the air. Gabriella lingered near the entrance, her heart pounding as she scanned the sea of familiar faces. Her family had orchestrated another flawless spectacle. Guests clinked champagne glasses, laughing and posing for photos, oblivious to the quiet storm about to unfold. Paisley nudged her gently. "You ready?" Gabriella exhaled and nodded. "Let's do this." As she stepped into the room, the crowd parted like a wave, heads turning as whispers rippled through the air. She caught glimpses of confusion, curiosity, and a few pointed stares. At the front of the room stood her parents, radiant in their meticulously planned spotlight. Her mother's smile faltered when she saw Gabriella approaching. "Gabriella," she said, her voice tight, "you're late." "Fashionably," Gabriella replied, her voice calm but carrying a weight that silenced the room. From behind her, Paisley handed her a neatly wrapped package. Gabriella held it out toward her parents. "I brought you a gift." Her mother hesitated, glancing nervously at the crowd before taking it. Her father stood beside her, his brow furrowed as he watched Gabriella with rare, genuine attention. "What is it?" her mother asked, her voice wavering. "Open it," Gabriella said simply, stepping back to let the moment breathe. Her mother unwrapped the package, revealing the leather-bound copy of Gabriella's memoir. The title, "The Art of Invisibility: A Daughter's Guide to Being Forgotten," gleamed in gold lettering. A murmur swept through the crowd. Her mother froze, her face pale. "Gabriella?" Gabriella opened the book to the dedication page and read aloud, her voice unwavering. "To my family, who taught me what it means to be invisible and, in doing so, helped me find the strength to be seen." The room was silent. Gabriella met her mother's wide eyes. "I spent years telling your story, painting the picture-perfect image you wanted the world to see. Now it's time for mine." Her father's voice broke the stillness. "We never saw you, did we?" Gabriella's gaze softened as she looked at him. "Not until now." For the first time, the polished facade of her family cracked. Her mother's trembling hands clutched the book, her usual composure crumbling. Gabriella didn't stay to see the fallout. She turned and walked away, Paisley by her side, knowing that this time she'd left an indelible mark. The days following the anniversary were unexpectedly quiet. Gabriella had anticipated more resistance, more defensiveness, but instead, her phone lit up with messages she never thought she'd receive. From her father. "I read the whole book.
I'm sorry.
I see you now." From Trey. "You were right. I should have been a better brother. I want to do better." From Marlo. "It's not easy to read about yourself through someone else's eyes, but I needed it. Let's talk." And most surprising of all, from her mother. "Can we have tea? I want to understand everything I missed." Gabriella agreed, cautiously optimistic. When her mother arrived, there were no grand apologies or dramatic speeches, just quiet honesty. They talked for hours, revisiting moments Gabriella had buried deep, moments her mother had dismissed or forgotten. By the end, her mother reached across the table, taking Gabriella's hand. "I can't fix the past, but I want to make things better from here." Gabriella smiled, tears brimming in her eyes. "That's all I ever wanted." A week later, they all gathered for a simple family dinner. No grand celebration, just a chance to be together. Gabriella felt something she hadn't in years. Hope. This time, there were no speeches, no expectations, just a new tradition built on seeing and valuing one another.